We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Football is Family podcast. Today we are going to East Rutherford, New Jersey to look at the New York Jets, Jets. And I have to say this, the Jets have a very passionate and loyal fan base. One of my favorite parts about the NFL draft is watching the Jets fans' reaction when their team makes a pick. Example, 1995 and Kyle Brady. That's a fun and awesome fan base who loves their team. The Jets were founded in 1959 as part of the Foolish Club, the AFL teams who went up against the NFL teams. Originally, the Jets were known as the New York Titans. The Titans began operation between a rock and a hard place. First, they were owned by a man named Harry Wismer. He was a wealthy man, but nowhere near wealthy enough to afford to lose the amount of money he did over the first years of the team. Wismer said that he lost $1.2 million his first year. There were times when people who worked for the Jets had to rush to the bank to withdraw their paycheck before it bounced. Second, they began playing, they being the Titans, began playing at the Polo Grounds. This stadium was originally built in 1880. When the Titans began playing, the stadium was 80 years old. And as you can tell by the name, the stadium wasn't built for football. The Titans didn't draw enough fans to begin with, coupled with the stadium, and you have a bad situation for the Titans to be profitable. Finally, the city of New York was a Giants city. The New York football Giants had been established for many years at this point. It is hard for a new team to come into their own when they have to deal with an established team like the New York Giants. The two big events turned the Titans around. First, the Titans were sold off to a group headed by a man named Sonny Werblin. Mr. Werblin would be the one who would change the team's name to the Jets due to the JFK and LaGuardia airports close by. And second, the Jets drafted a man by the name of Willie Joe Namath. Joe Namath really did turn this team around. His presence alone helped make the Jets a household name. Here's a little backstory to show how the Jets got Joe Namath. At the end of the AFL season in 1963, the Houston Oilers had the worst record in the league, which meant that they had the number one pick. Everybody knew that Namath would be that pick. The problem was Joe had the choice of playing for the NFL. Houston felt that they couldn't sign Joe Namath. So they worked out a deal with the Jets, who signed Namath for a 3-year, $427,000 contract, along with a convertible. Of course, we're very familiar with the guarantee. Namath guaranteed that the Jets would beat the highly favored Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. The Jets did win 16-7. One of the most iconic scenes in football history is watching Namath run off the field holding his index finger in the air. That is classic NFL. The Jets have made the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row in 2009 and 2010 and have made the playoffs 6 times in 2000s. Overall, the Jets' record is 408 wins, 500 losses, and 8 ties in the regular season, with 12 wins and 13 losses in the playoffs. And they boast an impressive 17 people represented in the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Their current owner is Woody Johnson. Now, if you want a little bit of trivia, I've got a couple things for you here. Their first overall pick was George Izzo, a quarterback from Notre Dame. Second, the Titans, the Titans at the time played their fourth game against the Dallas Texans. During this game, a last-second play was blocked out by the New York ABC station, who switched over from the game to the Davy Crockett special. This game happened before the Heidi Bowl game. I want to thank y'all for listening, and I hope you enjoy today's guest. He is a Jets fan with a great knowledge of the team history. I'll let him introduce himself. Now, if you want to be part of this podcast, please message me at Jeremy_McFarland on Twitter. That is at JEREMY_MCFARLIN on Twitter. And maybe we can get you on this podcast. And we'd like to welcome everybody back to another interview for the Football is Family podcast. And today I have a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, my friend?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. My name's Clayton Trutor. I teach U.S. history at Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont. I hold a PhD in U.S. history from Boston College. I'm the Vermont State Chairman of the Society for American Baseball Research. I'm a freelance writer in a number of different venues, including SB Nation, The New Criterion, Reason Magazine, among other places. And in 2021, I have a forthcoming book about the history of professional sports in which I can fill you in more on my Twitter feed at Clayton Trutor at ClaytonTrutor.
That is a mouthful, and guys, he did that in one breath. That is impressive. And if you're hearing static, I'm here in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, home of Loretta Lynn, and we had a major storm come through today. And when the gerbil stops running on the wheel, the internet goes down. So you might get a little lag here from that. The one thing I caught, and I read one of your interviews, and I cannot remember the man's name, but he wrote a book over Ty Cobb and then over, I believe it was Butch Cassidy or the Sundance Kid.
Yes, Charles Learson. I interviewed him recently for SB Nation's Down the Drive, the University of Cincinnati blog, which I run for SB Nation. I have a weekly interview column called Conversations with Clayton, and I was very lucky to get Charles Learson, who's a fantastic biographer, on the show recently.
Well, it was a fantastic interview. When you type in your name, lots of things come up, and that tells you you're getting around. So we're glad that you're here. Now, one thing that the concept behind this podcast is football is about the players. Yes, I'm sitting in my office here, and I have a bobblehead of Kevin Dyson of Eddie George. I'm pro Titans, as you're going to find out. I've got several things here. I have a picture right over there, and you can't see it, but I'm pointing over there. I was at the game that Derrick Henry busted off the 99-yard run against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he is stiff-arming some poor Jaguar fan or player. And I think the man is still in the hole there at Nissan Stadium. You know, football is about the players, yes, but more importantly, it's about the fans. And what better way to learn about the fans than to get a little bit of history about what makes each fan base special? So I am told by you that you are a Jets fan. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
How in the world?
My mom, I often say, raised me in the Church of Joe Namath. She was one of many young women of the baby boomer generation who embraced Joe Namath as the icon of the sport as it was becoming more broadly popular across the national landscape. In New England, which is seen as Patriots country now, it was a lot more flexible in terms of team support previously. There were some Jets fans, there were some Patriots fans. Really, until the year 2000, the Patriots were kind of a laughingstock. They were certainly the fourth most popular franchise in the Boston marketplace. They'd had very poor ownership for many years. They played at Foxborough Stadium, which was a very decrepit, erector set-like stadium. If anything, much of northern New England in particular was New York Giants country. So it was much more open territory in terms of which team you supported. And my mom had been a diehard Jets fan since the Namath era, and she was the primary sports fan in my household. So I ended up supporting the teams that she supported, which are the Boston teams, except for the Patriots, and then the New York Jets.
So we are talking. See, we can relate. I like the Bruins. I'm
Okay.
the Celtics. The Boston Red Sox are my team. In Joe Harrigan's book, NFL Century, and I don't know if you had a chance to see that yet.
Oh, love that book. Love that book. Yeah.
Fantastic book. He talks about how Robert Kraft knew he had to build a new stadium, and he took a chance to build a new stadium buying blue steel for the stadium in that chapter, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And the stuff I didn't know, but that is a great book. But so I was going to ask what were the teams in the North at the time, but during the 60s, one thing that I have read about the Jets is when the AFL started, the Houston Oilers, which became my Titans, they were successful. You had the Dallas Texans, which eventually became the Kansas City Chiefs. They were successful. The Buffalo Bills had their moments. You go around and look. I'm trying to remember the other ones. The San Diego Chargers, the Oakland Raiders. But the
do you know what the Raiders' original name was? I read this one time.
Yours.
Yeah, the Oakland Seniors, because the owner liked calling people Senior. So for like 4 hours, they were the Oakland Seniors instead of the Raiders.
Yeah, I didn't know the backstory behind that, but I thought that wouldn't go over well today.
No.
And
it was a different time.
And you couldn't say the Alden winner's like a Raider. Alden winner's like a Senior. It doesn't sound right. No.
No, it certainly doesn't.
It doesn't. But the one thing that I found about the Jets is that they were in all the things during the 50th anniversary of AFL season. You remember that everything came out during that time.
Sure.
I was at a Kmart in Dixon, we're close to where I live, and I found a New York Titans hat. I'm like, what in the world? I have never heard of the New York Titans. And I thought I knew football. So I did a little research in it, and they folded. The New York Titans were pretty much it. They were gone because of money problems. Now, when it came to the Jets, do you believe that Joe Namath was the man that put the Jets on the map?
Oh, no doubt about it. It was also a matter of ownership change, too. When they were the Titans, they had a guy named Harry Wismer, who was a PR man in New York who owned them, who just didn't have enough money to own a team, which was actually kind of similar to the Patriots. Their owner was a guy named Billy Sullivan, who was, I think he led a fairly comfortable middle-class lifestyle, but he certainly didn't belong owning a major professional sports team. And Wismer was in the same position. Once Sonny Werblin bought the team, who was involved in TV and many other enterprises, they had a lot more money to invest, and they invested it in Namath when he became available. And Namath was very much a born star and a perfect guy for the television era that emerged in the NFL during the 1960s.
Now, I did two of my kids were born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in the shadow of Bryant-Denny. So I did a little when I was down there. I wasn't familiar with Alabama. I grew up a Vanderbilt Commodores fan, so don't hold that against me.
I think that's incredibly admirable. Anytime somebody, as a Jets fan, I can certainly feel this too. Anytime somebody sticks behind a team that is not regularly successful, to me it is reflective of a strong character. Or
we're gluttons. But I did not know, because I thought that Joe Namath asked for about $400,000 and a car, and I can't remember the exact car he wanted. It was a Caddy, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
But he had a doctor basically tell the ownership of the Jets to not sign him because of his knees.
Yeah, in Mark Kriegel's excellent biography of Namath, it talks about that this was a very physically compromised young man, that if he was playing now with similar knees, a lot of people would have hesitated to draft him, that he was from day one playing on borrowed time. And some people will look at his record and say he kind of declined after, say, 69, 70. This is a guy who was just not physically whole from a very young age, and it's remarkable he was successful for as long as he was, considering just that he was a very much hobbled man by the time he was 22, 23 years old.
But would the Jets have won the Super Bowl without Joe Namath?
Oh, certainly not. There's an excellent new book called Beyond Broadway Joe by a guy named, I follow him on Twitter. I read part of it. My mom, who's a big Jets fan, read it recently too. It's essentially about the contributions of the other guys on the team.
Yes.
Certainly, the whole team played a significant role in it, but I think Namath is the driving force behind the run, and certainly the face of the franchise and the face of the American Football League too, as it approached the merger.
Now, there's two things about Joe Namath that sticks out to me. His swagger. Very few people can pull off a fur coat like Joe Namath could do.
Or pantyhose.
But also, I believe he might be the only person in the Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback-wise who have more interceptions than touchdowns.
That's quite possible. I kind of wonder about some of the early quarterbacks, Sammy Baugh or people like that. But yeah, I mean, I always make note it was just simply a different game in the AFL in the 1960s. That in the contemporary era of short passing, it's very different. The number of interceptions you're going to chalk up to an era when guys are throwing long all the time, when interceptions down the field were regarded by many coaches as being something like a punt. So to me, that's one of the things with statistical things in football, more than I think pretty much any other sport, it's kind of apples and oranges, comparing a lot of the different statistical aspects, particularly with quarterback play, I think. Because if you look at the contemporary quarterback stats, you assume all of them are better than all of the quarterbacks from the past. And I think there's a lot of fine quarterbacks now, but I just don't think it's the case that quarterback play is so radically superior to what it was in all the previous generations. I think the game has just evolved.
Well, the running back has evolved. The receivers have evolved. The tight ends, they've evolved. And I agree with you. I got a couple of things for you here. You ready? What got you liking the New York Jets? What's that?
And certainly the pass interference rules have evolved too. The protections of the quarterback, linemen being able to use their hands in a way they weren't historically. I mean, the offense has innumerable advantages it didn't in the 60s and 70s.
Well, exactly. I remember watching, who was it that did it might have been the coach for the San Francisco 49ers did my mind went blank for his name. Bill Walsh did something on the NFL Today talking about that in the 80s, about how that is different plays for that. And how each different for the receivers and the defenders, how that they can defend and how they can catch better. It's big changes to get more offense. The question I was going to ask you is what got you liking the New York Jets in the first place, but you gave us that answer. It's your mother. Do you blame her for the butt fumble?
No. I always never thought that was that big of a deal. I mean, guys tumble for all kinds of reasons. I mean, of all the embarrassing things the Jets have been involved in, I'm not even sure that's the biggest one. I think the biggest mistake the Jets ever made was leaving the Super Bowl trophy on the side of the highway after winning it. I don't understand why that's not a bigger part. That it just was the Lombardi trophy was just sitting there on the side of the highway in Miami for like an hour. That it didn't disappear is remarkable. To me, that in many more ways reflects the futility of the franchise than anything. Playing in Giant Stadium for 25 years, you're playing in your neighbor's stadium. It makes you look so weak playing in a stadium with the other team's name on it. I think the Jets have done a million more embarrassing things than that myself.
I think Mark Sanchez really is getting a bad rap about that. He was a better quarterback than that one moment.
Yeah, it's also a tough thing. If they were a pretty solid team, they had some good offensive weapons, they had an excellent defense, and he was a young quarterback trying to grow into the position, and frankly, at his best, was probably an average quarterback in the league. And I think a lot of times quarterbacks who are not up to the rest of the team around them end up getting worse reputations than they deserve. I think of Sean King with the Buccaneers in the late 90s, early 2000s, was an okay quarterback, but that Buccaneers team was on the cusp of greatness. And Brad Johnson got to come in and look like a superstar, being a slightly better quarterback just a year or two later.
All you needed was a defense like they had.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Who is your favorite player in NFL history?
Well, I mean, I love Namath. I in historical sense, I enjoy Walter Payton too. I'm a little bit too young to remember him as a player. I enjoy reading about him. Probably my favorite player who I enjoyed his whole career was Wayne Corbett, who came from a small college, kind of came out of nowhere, and had a highly productive career for close to a decade with the Jets. He was also a local guy. He was from New Jersey. He went to Hofstra. which in Hampstead, New York, which is where the Jets had their training camp. So as being this kind of local guy made good, Crevette became my favorite player during my adolescence and early adulthood.
That one Monday night game when Arnold Schwarzenegger picked him to go off, and it happened. And I believe Keyshawn Johnson is still his biggest fan.
Yes, indeed.
Don't
He's
write
a flashlight and I'm a star.
Don't write a book about getting the ball. Just play the game.
That's right.
Being a historian, you see things different from a different perspective than most people. You see how things are built up over time. Things just don't happen. What do you think? That's the idea of history, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you think is the main reason or reasons why the NFL is what it is today?
Television. A couple of aspects to it. First of all, football presents on television better than any other sport. It presents across the landscape. It has a very cinematic quality. You have NFL Films who created from a very early day high-quality productions of the game. It looks better on TV than any other sport. Baseball proved too slow for television in many respects. It's very well suited to the radio as a result. Lighting issues, I think, in many ways hurt, even to the present, continue to hurt both the NBA and the NHL in terms of its presentation on television. Hockey also has the issue with the puck being difficult to see. Television, football is a wonderful game live. In some ways it's tougher when you're down close than it is. I always like to sit way high up to get a more kind of seeing the whole siege happening kind of view of the game. But football had just presented from a very early day by CBS and NBC and later ABC on Monday Night Football. Football presented so well on television. Secondly, the television deals that the NFL was able to work out because of its once-a-week schedule structure. The, in essence, socialized profit-sharing model the AFL and NFL developed under Rozelle for giving all the teams equal TV money helps create a highly competitive league, a league in which every team was a profitable entity. Made it very different than baseball, where the Yankees are going to have one level of television money and the Milwaukee Brewers are going to have a radically different one. So by having a degree of parity, by making all of the owners wealthy, and by having a product that presented so well in this medium, television is what made the NFL the country's premier sport, and why, as long as mass spectacle sports are on television, football will be the most popular among them by a wide margin. I always laughed 2 or 3 years ago when people talked about the NBA. Oh, the NBA is the wave of the future, as it has been for 40 years. The NBA playoffs have had 2.5 million people watching them. When they have Sunday football games in a couple of weeks, there will be 10 times as many people watching almost every game.
I went to the NFL draft. I didn't stay for the draft itself, but when it came down to Nashville, I had to go and see it because I didn't want to get stuck in Second Avenue. And I want to say there were tens of thousands of people in that one area for the draft. And I have been told, and if I'm wrong, let me know, that there's more people who watched the first, second, and third days of the draft than the NFL playoffs in the past few years.
Really? I didn't know that. I don't know. I believe it. I think it's quite possible.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember reading that. I believe it was in Street and Smith or Athlon's last year, and I don't quote me on that. But let me tell you, I've been to several Nashville Predator games. It's great live. I can't watch it.
Yes.
I can't watch it on TV. I can listen to the radio, but I can't watch it on TV. But pro football, what I like to do is I like to mute the commentators on the TV and listen to Mike Keith and Dave McGinnis for Titans Radio, and that's what I like to do. But the problem is it's not synced up. You hear about the play before you see it, but I agree with you on that. Now, got a question. I want you to think about your knowledge. We got about 100 years of NFL football to think about. You can start any quarterback right now for your team throughout the years. Go back to Sammy Baugh, Otto Graham. Who would it be?
I love Sammy Baugh because you got a guy who can play defensive back, who can punt for you. You have an incredibly versatile player in Sammy Baugh. I think he'd be a great choice. I was actually watching some footage of, I think it was the 1950 NFL Championship game recently, which was the first one after the AAFC NFL merger.
Yes.
And it's amazing how well Graham throws the ball. He throws a very catchable ball. He throws a tight spiral on a very terrible day it was when that game was played, with a ball which is certainly not of the quality of a contemporary NFL ball. The degree to which he looked like a contemporary passer, I think, is shocking. I think Otto Graham would be a great choice. I'm certainly prejudiced on behalf of Namath. I loved watching Brett Favre throughout his career. I thought it was a very entertaining player to see. To be frank, a lot of the elite quarterbacks of the moment I find a little stiff to watch at times. I mean, they're so good. They're so perfect in terms of their progressions and everything. I think I kind of fear a degree of color and character has been lost from quarterback play by it being so regimented into these very highly scripted progression-based offenses. I mean, there are really almost no genuinely terrible starting quarterbacks in the league anymore, and I think it's in part reflective of the change in quarterback play. So I would almost certainly pick a guy who is not a quarterback of this moment. I guess those would be the guys in my conversation. Staubach is incredible to go back and watch. He's just such a sleek player. Had a great long ball. I think it's underrated the degree to which he was an excellent running quarterback too. He got, even though his career was relatively short because of both having served in Vietnam, but also he got hurt a lot because he was running and scrambling and diving around a lot too. But going back and watching Staubach, he's an incredibly sleek player to watch on the field too. I guess I answered the question with about 5 or 6 different quarterbacks, but those would be the guys that come to mind.
Just don't ask Otto Graham to do a Wheaties commercial. Have you seen the videos of that?
No, I know nothing about this.
I believe it was Wheaties, but they were trying to market Otto Graham, and he won. He won, I think, 10 years that he played. He won titles just about every year, but was not an actor. He was not an actor. Roger Staubach, to me, is somebody, him and Ken Stabler could make it today.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
yeah, I agree with that completely.
You would want Roger Staubach to be the face of your franchise.
Yes.
Ken Stabler probably couldn't get away with what he used to, reading the playbook by the light of the jukebox. He probably couldn't do that now. Maybe
sweating out the whiskey throughout the first quarter.
Yeah, probably not a good idea. But both of those guys, when you talk about Fran Tarkenton, you're talking about people that you got today. Those guys could transition. Fran Tarkenton would have to get a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
He would be creamed. And I'm surprised he played as long as he did. But
that's remarkable. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the Steelers in the 70s, I believe that Staubach would have at least 5 or 6 Super Bowls. They were that good.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're right about that. I agree completely. I read that. Have you read that Chuck Noll biography by Michael McCambridge?
No, I have not. I don't even know. Is it available online?
Yeah, you can get it. I actually think I've read it and listened to it. I think the first time I heard it on Audible. I do a month-to-month subscription on that, and which I think I love it when I'm commuting and stuff, listening to Audible.com. But I listened to that book, and man, Bradshaw does not come off well in that presentation. That he just seems like he was a very tough guy to deal with day to day. A lot of his teammates didn't seem to like him, and really for the first half of his career, he was a guy who just seemed like he didn't have it together in terms of his performance in a consistent basis.
They nearly, if I remember correctly, they nearly benched him for the guy, Jefferson Street Joe.
Jim Gillum.
Yes, he lived up in Nashville for a long time. Joe Gillum, if it wasn't for the fact of injuries and drug abuse, would probably be a Hall of Famer. Poor guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first half of their first championship season, I think Gillum started half the games.
Yes, and he was
because
fantastic.
He just got sick of. Yeah, he got sick of Bradshaw just throwing crazy interceptions and doing dumb stuff.
But see, that's where you get back and look at how history has changed and progressed the quarterback. You're talking about people that it's become more of a thinking man's game. And that's the idea. Is just, and that's where Brett Favre would make you, oh, he's got it. Then you break your heart.
Yes, and throw into triple coverage and everything. And I feel like he did that on purpose sometimes. I think he he almost liked the game to be a really theatrical kind of thing. Part of me just wonders that about his personality.
See, I can't say too much because I do that on Madden a lot. Wonder why Ryan Tannehill has a lot of interceptions. That's just me. What is the one thing about Jets history you would like to own right now? If you could have an item.
You know, of all the questions, that's the one I've been thinking about the most. I've been pondering that for a couple hours because I'm not really that big of a memorabilia guy. I think if I could do anything, I would want Joe Namath to give my mom a call. I'd talk to my mom for like 10 minutes. That would mean the world to her. That would, more than owning any kind of particular thing, that's the thing, Jets kind of thing I'd want to have.
Now, I want to tell you this because I am one. Are you a mama's boy?
Oh, no doubt about it.
I'm one too, and there's nothing wrong with that, folks. There's nothing wrong with that. I have some the big things I have around here. I got to meet Chris Johnson his rookie year.
Oh, wow.
The Titans, and he took a picture with my son, signed something for me. But one thing that somebody gave me is an autograph card with Kevin Dyson, and it's a drawing of the Music City Miracle, and he has Music City Miracle underneath it. And it's just a football card, but that means something. It's something that means something to you, like the Joe Namath call would mean something. But now you got probably one of the biggest upsets of all time, Super Bowl III. The Baltimore Colts should have rolled over that team.
Yeah. It seems, some people have tried to kind of counterfactually present, well, they were kind of slow. They were kind of a team that was on their last legs. I don't buy that. I think the Colts probably, if they played 10 times, would have won that game 9 of them. It's just a lot of circumstances came together. And from a book I read called Collision of Wills by Jack Gilden, which is really an excellent account of the Shula Unitas relationship, it seems like Shula's arrogance in many ways kind of cost him in some big games time after time early in his career. He certainly learned from it, but they blew that the shoe. Whether it was the '64 championship game against the Browns or Super Bowl III, his early or the Super Bowl against the Cowboys, I think it was Super Bowl VI, where they got beat 24-3. He had a way of losing big games and coming up small in those moments early in his coaching career.
But he did learn from it. Do you think he is the greatest coach of all time until about 2 more years and Bill Belichick takes that title?
I think about that a lot. What Vince Lombardi did was pretty incredible. I kind of love the simplicity of their offense and the ability to execute it so well. Belichick is tough to argue with. It's remarkable what he's done. Chuck Noll's tough to. Would be. I think someone could certainly argue on behalf of him. I think in terms of inventing what running a modern team is like, Landry could certainly, the argument could be made for him. Bill Walsh, I think the argument could be made for. I think there's like about 5 or 6 guys in the conversation. I think it's really a matter of taste in a lot of ways. I would almost lean Noll, I think, but in part because I think he's been, and partially because I read that biography recently, so I've been thinking about Chuck Noll. But I think he's also been maybe a little undervalued among that kind of Mount Rushmore of coaches.
What you need is a seal here and a seal there, and you go up the alley. And that was
that's right.
That was the Green Bay running play. And I tell you, they told you it was coming. Good luck stopping it with Forrest Gregg, and then you got their running back. That was an amazing team. Amazing team.
Yes, certainly was.
And Bart Starr really doesn't get a lot of credit because they didn't ask him to throw a lot. But if it wasn't for him, I don't think they would have won what they did.
Yeah, I guess he's kind of the ultimate game manager, isn't he?
That if you can hang a title on somebody, and I'm sure he didn't mind it because he's got the rings to prove it. Got one more question for you, my friend, and I will let you go for the day. What makes football family to you? Now, you've explained about your mother. Is that part of it?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. From the time I was a little kid, the weekends in the fall was either my brother and I playing football or watching pro football, watching college football. It's just the rhythm of our lives in the fall was built around football from the time I was a very little boy. I was also thinking, I think you had a question about the first time I ever watched a football game. I got thinking about that too. It was January 31st, 1988 was my first recollection specifically of watching football. It was Super Bowl 22 with the Redskins and Broncos, and I was a pretty little boy, and
we don't talk about
I guess
that.
a rather little boy.
We don't talk about that.
Oh, are you a Redskins fan or?
Oh, it's a Bronco fan, 42-10. We don't talk about that.
Okay. Well, okay, but my point is actually positive for the Broncos. I went to bed after the first quarter of that game. My mom's like, "Oh, I'll go to bed. I got school the next day." The Broncos were ahead 10-0 when I went to bed. Barefoot Rich Carlos had just kicked the extra point to make it 10-0. So I was like, "Oh, the Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl." And then, all hell broke loose in the second quarter. But that's my first. I'm sure I was sitting around football games. It's the first one of which I have a conscious memory. For whatever reason, I was like 6. I was 6, 7 then. All of my first sports memories tend to be from 1988 because I very distinctly remember the Olympics like 2 weeks after that, and then I remember the baseball season well. So it's all in many ways, it's my first really conscious sports memory is watching the first quarter of Super Bowl 22.
That actually is my first memory as well, and which led me to several years of watching the Broncos not make it, and then finally seeing them win 2. And they would have had a fan if they hadn't traded my boy Jay Cutler away. That's all I can say. That hurts. That hurts.
I'm so glad to hear you. I have been such a Jay Cutler defender for many years. I think that the fact that a guy who dealt with diabetes was able to have such an impressive football career is one of the most understated sports stories of recent memory. Just all of the physical things that entails that he was going through, whether it was psychologically, whether it was in terms of how he was feeling throughout his body, that he was able to be not just a competent NFL quarterback, but a nearly elite NFL quarterback for several seasons is a remarkable accomplishment, I think.
If anybody out there has a Jay Cutler Dolphins jersey that they want to let go, let me know. I do not. That's the only one I don't have of his.
If I come across one, I will be mailing it to you.
You let me know. Even though it hurts me to think that he went to the Dolphins for one year. I mean, I'm sure it didn't hurt him with his checking. I think he got a $30 million contract that year, which wouldn't hurt at all.
Not at all, no.
Well, Mr. Clayton, I appreciate your time today. And folks, this is another reason why football is family. You can have a good discussion and get to meet some new people. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a genuine pleasure.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.